up, you guys? Welcome back. All right, in today's video, we're talking about the hidden cost of hyper-independence and how to let love in. And I say hyper-independence because there's the sort of healthy form of independent that we know, but this is like the extreme of the spectrum. So let's dive in. I've got my notes. I want to start out by saying that most of us were taught that being independent is what makes us healthy. It's what makes us successful. And, to some degree that's true. We do want to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. We do want to be self-reliant. We want to be resilient. We want to be responsible. But hyper-independence is a defense mechanism. This is like a self-protection mechanism. It's like walls up, guard up, massive lack of trusting other people, big fears of intimacy. It might even be a trauma response. If trying to get your needs met growing up meant a lot of pain and suffering, then your sort of unconscious response to that is going to be to learn how to do it all yourself. Or maybe on like a more sort of positive spin, you got a lot of attention growing up for doing everything, or that was like your parents' love language. When you achieved things, they gave you a lot of attention. Then you might equate achieving everything for yourself as a way to earn love. So you kind of have to do more of a deep dive into how you grew up and where the root of this is. But ultimately, hyper-independence is saying, I don't need anyone for anything. AKA, because the hidden meaning there is, if I never let anyone in that could disappoint me or let me down, nobody can hurt me. And those two sentences there, like, this is the crux of this entire video. But in hyper-independence, yeah, you might be getting everything done, but you're starving yourself of connection, of intimacy, of emotional or financial or quality time or like other forms of support that many people would be more than happy to give you if you were, able to ask for it and genuinely open to receive it. So this is a process to shift out of this pattern. Because if this pattern has kept you safe, like people aren't in your life so they can't hurt you or let you down, no one's betraying you, no one's, like, again, you might have expectations, well, who cares if they're not being met because no one's there to meet them, therefore you won't be sad. Do you know what I'm saying? There's so many ways that we can dance around what we actually desire. So to start changing this, there are a few things that I always suggest. First of all, because this is connected with not trusting people, you've got to start building self-trust. Because once you start to trust yourself, it's going to be much easier. I'm not saying that it's always easy, but it will be much easier to trust other people instead of assuming that everybody that you let into your world is going to hurt you. You've also got to strengthen your nervous system so that you can handle the uncomfortable feelings that will arise as you start to connect with people. Like your insecurities, perhaps, that have been buried. You haven't had to deal with them because no one was there to mirror it back, or maybe rejection or vulnerability. Like, you want to be able to handle that, because to have connection, especially if you crave deep intimacy, and that's what I teach. I don't teach like a weekend workshop to like whatever, have had sex with 2-3 tips, or I teach a lot of platonic intimacy too. What I'm talking about is deep intimacy. I'm talking about sustaining connection that intensifies and gets richer over long periods of time. Even the way that I work with my clients is mostly in long-term spaces, 6 months to a year plus. Or, do you know what I mean? My clients have come back many times over the years, and many of them have been with me 6, 7, 8+ years. And that's because this isn't quick work. But also deep intimacy is something that happens over time. So you have to strengthen your nervous system to sustain closeness. If you've been used to being hyper independent, then having people close to you feels uncomfortable. So then you have to learn how to let people in and not immediately contract, withdraw, push them away, sabotage it somehow. And no one's doing this perfectly. You know what I'm saying? Like the learning curve is not linear. It's not a straight line. Like, it's more like a spiral. You'll circle back to old lessons. You might slide back a few steps, take a leap forward, go backwards, etc. But every time you circle back to a point, like, you should have a new perspective. And so you're evolving through it, you know? And another thing is that you've got to be willing to feel things physically, like the sensations in your body that your hyper independence is masking. And one of the ways that I really see this show up is that you could be quote unquote independent, but you could at that same time simultaneously be ignoring your deeper needs, the ones that you don't want to talk about, the ones that scare you, the ones that feel intimidating, or the ones that you're afraid won't get met if you let someone in. So maybe you're a workaholic and you bury yourself in your work, or maybe you're just like overcommitted, burying yourself in activities and using the narrative like, I'm always so busy, I'm so burned out, I do everything, as a way to be like, see, I'm too busy to have a relationship. I'm too busy doing everything to even have the space to focus on a relationship, so I won't. And that could go on for years, decades even. Or maybe you're using like hyper-independence as a way to get sympathy. Listen, if we don't have functional skills and ways to ask and share, why do you guys think I teach this stuff? Like, we didn't learn how to do this. Most of our parents didn't teach us these things. They didn't have a clue. So we will unconsciously find ways to get attention, get affection, but that might be very distorted. So maybe one of the ways that you get attention or sympathy is like, oh my, like almost martyrdom. Look at me, I carry everything, I do it all. Don't you feel bad for me? Like kind of looking to get connection from the shadow. When there are really much healthier ways to do this, but to have that, you're gonna have to be willing to be vulnerable and also feel uncomfortable feelings. Like I said, hyper-independence doesn't mean that you're there genuinely meeting your needs, and I mean the deepest needs and yearnings and longings. You could literally just be alone and avoiding, numbing out, escaping. So you've got to be willing to feel stuff like anger and grief or loneliness or sadness, or even more joy without freaking out, because if you're used to being sad and alone, then it might be a shock to your system to experience more joy and pleasure and playfulness and fun. You might be like, what is this? Doesn't feel safe either. Fuck this. And then you find a way to push it away. Do you see what I mean? We say we know what we want, but it's like our unconscious mind is running our life. So we just have to get in there and dig a little deeper. So to start to shift this, it's like you're shifting from a few, like imagine independence, like you're standing alone, like this cup, you're alone. And then interdependence is like you're alone and the other is here and you're not all enmeshed. Like you have a sense of identity, you have a sense of self, you're meeting your own needs, but also you can connect and meet each other's needs happily, and that's interdependence. You feel complete on your own, but also you can say, I need you to the other person, and it's totally fun. But if you're in independence, hyper-independence, this is saying, like a healthy independence is, I am complete without you. I don't need you. I meet my own needs in a healthy way, like that will allow others in, but I am building a strong sense of self and of self-reliance. That is part of our development curve. Like you do want to learn how to be independent. You don't want to be codependent, where it's like, I don't have needs, I don't have an identity without the other person, I self-abandon to have a connection with this person, I'm lost, I get lost in relationships, I don't know who I am. That's different. So independence is not a bad thing. And then you want to really shift from hyper-independence to independence. And then from independence, once you're like, okay, I feel complete, but also I'm starting to let people in. It's okay. It's safe to have needs. It's safe to have needs. Then interdependence is like, yes, I'm complete without you, and I need you too. I can meet my needs, and I want to meet your needs too. That's what we're aiming for. But it's like, we didn't really learn this. This isn't a very mainstream narrative. I think we're just conditioned to think independence is everything. And then instead of having boundaries that are like, you know, that things can come in, is that permeable? Like, you want things to be able to enter, but we're so used to hearing that if you have needs and you ask for your needs to be met, that you're needy. And then needy gets this bad connotation when it's like, it's totally human to have needs. But if you don't have a strong sense of self, if you don't have a strong sense of self-trust, then it can feel really terrifying to let people in. And also you might feel like I'm going to lose myself if I give to others so freely. So do you know what I mean? There are definitely layers to this, or levels to this. Because being needy, like I said, as bad of a rap as that gets, it's like reputation. It would mean like you feel incomplete without somebody else. Again, it's almost like the codependency, which we're not going to get into here because it's okay. Like, that's not really the focus. What I'm saying is independence isn't a bad thing. Hyper independence is really completely blocking connection. And we really, really want to move to that sense of like two pillars that are standing next to one another, but they can like connect and touch and be with one another without losing that core pillar sense of self. So, you know, to do this, like I said, you need a strong inner emotional foundation, a strong inner energetic foundation. And again, to have reached a level of independence where you are happily meeting your needs. And I mean, like I said, the real needs. Yeah, you want to take care of your basics. Rent is paid, bills are paid, you're fed, you're clean, like all the basics, obviously. Where the first place would start to look, you know, that you'd want to look would be the places that you've been avoiding. The needs, a lot of it for people is intimate. They think that when they're alone, intimacy is null and void. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That's why I do videos on intimacy, but I don't just mean sexual intimacy. I mean emotional intimacy with yourself. Maybe it is physical intimacy or just being present in your body and not like stuck in your head or mind, you know, doom scrolling on social media or numbing out for like 10 hours in front of the TV. Like all these things in moderation, but do you know what I'm saying? A lot of people are alone and they're not actually meeting their needs, the deepest needs. So you really want to look there first. What is hyper independence helping me avoid beyond just letting people into your world? So you start to meet your own needs, the deeper ones, beyond the basics. And because again, hyper independence oftentimes is like linked to overachieving and seeing achievements as your identity, seeing achievements as what makes you worthy. But if you strip away all your achievements and you're like, okay, but that's not where you find your worthiness, people feel lost. They're like, who am I then? Do I deserve love if I'm not constantly achieving and working for it and working hard and burned out to the max, to the crisp? So you need to start to meet your own deeper needs and really fill that emotional, you know, physical, sensual, spiritual cup so that you don't feel like giving to others or letting people in even is a threat to your identity or that it's going to lead you to like self-abandon or go out of integrity. And personally, my favorite way to resolve hyper independence, like one of the first of all, you could start with yourself. Like for example, for women, I created a course called Return of Venus, and it's a sacred embodiment, sensual embodiment course, right? With meditations and embodiment practices and some themes on boundaries and vulnerability and emotional connection and these things, so that you start to delve into those places. Because like I said, just because you're alone doesn't mean that you're tending to any of that stuff. In fact, you're probably not. So that would be a great first step, and that's a self-led course, so you can move through that at your own pace. You know, it's designed for 5 weeks, but that's really where I start with people. It's like, first you got to connect to you, to the parts of you that you're not looking at, to the parts of you that you're suppressing or running from or neglecting. And then from there, it can be really powerful to come into a group space or to work one-to-one, you know, because this is why I do one-to-one sessions, just 90-minute sessions. I also offer long-term mentorship called Devotion, and that's a long-term program. For repeat clients, I do 6 months, like minimum, and then for new clients, it's a year. And we go there. Again, nothing that I'm doing with people, it's not to say that you can't have a rapid transformation or that you can't get something from a workshop. For example, I still host workshops. In fact, I've got one coming in Scorpio season on sex, money, power, and some purification around that, around the shadow. So workshops are great, you know, little things are great, but ultimately to move through hyper independence, it's so important to put yourself in places where you're out of your comfort zone of being alone, you know, and intentionally placing yourself in secure spaces where you're going to be held and seen and witnessed and vulnerable, and then choosing to stay. So I've got a waitlist open now for the Magdalene Mysteries. This is my year-long women's group program. I hosted 2 years of Rose Temple. This is, if you're familiar with that program, this is the evolved version of Rose Temple. So it's called Magdalene Mysteries, and this is going to be really, really excellent if you are like a lone wolf. If you do tend to avoid connection, but you crave deep intimacy, or you're on the path where you want to be in conscious partnership. Like, this is for women on the path of union. So it's a 12-month program, and it will be intimate. It will be like max 8 to 10 women. So the wait list is open. And again, the first step, like one of the first steps beyond maybe starting to connect with yourself with some embodiment practices, again, on Return of Venus's page, I have a free sensual embodiment series with 2 practices. So you're welcome to like give those a whirl. Try it out. But choosing to devote yourself to a long-term container, especially a group container, is a great step to prioritize and choose deep intimacy. Not superficial connection, not just short bursts, but like if, for example, conscious partnership is a strong desire of yours, you're going to need to learn how to sustain connection without running away. And that's why I designed these programs to be a year. Because I know, being this kind of archetype myself, like I know how easy it is to want to quit, to run away as soon as the challenges surface, the tough emotions start surfacing, you start to see your shadow, you're like, oh, fuck this. If the, common tendency is to avoid connection, it would be way too easy to back out and bounce. So you're actually like, no, I'm choosing to stay for a full year and actually ride this wave fully. And this is how you really build your tolerance for connection and learn how to be seen in all of your, emotional facets within an intimate group. This is all super essential stuff if you want to be in union. And I mean like either in this inner union with yourself and experiencing more connection in your day-to-day world, even platonic, or if you really want to be in a conscious relationship, it is alchemy, you guys, purification. It's the good stuff, the fun stuff, and all that pleasure and joy, yes. And conscious relationship, if you're truly practicing, is a mirror. So you're going to see all your shit come up too. So you need to learn how to actually maintain connection. So for me, these group spaces are like where I think some of the most powerful transformation can happen, because you just can't rush this. You just can't. It's just by nature. Like flowers need time to bloom. So do you. So that's what I've got going on right now. So if you're a woman and this interests you, then definitely get on the wait list, because like I said, once applications open, the spots are limited. So it'll be first come, first serve, whoever signs up first. And I'm going to be starting to open up applications depending on interest, probably end of November, because I'm looking to start Magdalene Mysteries after the holidays in January. So it would probably be like mid to late January. And that's it, you guys. If you're a man, you can always work with me one-to-one. You could always start with a 90-minute session, because even with my 90-minute sessions, I send you guys follow-up resources after to continue. So whatever's going on in your life, I've got a 12+ year archive of resources, meditations, all different kinds of things. So after our call, I always send a follow-up email, very thorough, with like a few resources that you can keep going with, so you don't feel like you're on a cliffhanger. You know what I mean? I want you to continue after we're done, so you get the clarity that you need, but then you can keep the momentum going. So that's all, you guys. If you've got any questions, comments, whatever, leave them below. I love reading your comments. And other than that, all the links are in the description box that I talked about, and I will see you guys soon in the next one.